Okay. You're recording?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to hit go live. All right, gents, you are live.
All right. All right. Well.
Okay. I'm going to hit go live. All right, gents, you are live.
So welcome, Michael Rhodes, to the Age of Pandora. So this is a weekly show that David and I have been doing together for about the last year. Unfortunately, David cannot join us today because he's had a bout with pneumonia. So welcome, Michael Rhodes, to the Age of Pandora. So this is a weekly show that David and I...
The ghost in the
Sorry
box.
about that. I think I had a double thing going. Oops. All right, so here we are again. So welcome again, Michael.
Thank you very much.
And I met Michael and his beautiful wife, Carolyn. I think it was in Baden-Baden, Germany, 10 years ago or so. And it was just such a joy because, you know, Michael, you've been one of my beloved heroes for such a long time. You know, ever since I read your first books, Talking with Nature, Journey into Nature, Journey into Oneness. And at that time, you're discovering your own experience, your own expansion into the kingdoms of nature through Pan. And, you know, as you say now, that relationship has changed, where it's no longer a being outside of you, no matter how expanded, but the universal aspect of all there is. You know, Pan being everything, and discovering that in yourself, and you teach people how to experience this also through your workshops, through your books, through your teachings. So I'm just going to start with a short formal introduction to Michael and his work, and then we'll just go into a conversation. So Michael Rhodes was born a farmer's son in Cambridgeshire, England in 1937. From an early age, he discovered that he had a natural ability to communicate with the mineral, plant, and animal kingdoms and travel beyond linear time and space. He has actively continued to develop these abilities over the last 60 years. Since his spiritual enlightenment at age 49, Michael, a best-selling author, has written 23 books on his experiences and explorations of alternate realities and dimensions. For over 30 years, he has traveled 5 continents, presenting inspirational and life-changing 5-day intensives on emotional balance, unconditional love, and the meaning of life. He speaks this in a clear, compelling, humorous, and no-nonsense format, enabling many participants to experience profound shifts in consciousness. He also writes and speaks on the metaphysical world of nature and communication with nature. Michael, a modern mystic, weaves his wealth of life experiences with the most extraordinary insights, allowing people to experience the interconnectedness of the web of life, bridging our inner and outer worlds, and offering the ability to maintain a state of peace and freedom regardless of the situations and circumstances of our lives. Very important for these times. He has the consciousness and ability to empower people and assist them in remembering and reconnecting with their divine potential. Michael demonstrates that the extraordinary is really quite ordinary when shown the way by one who has spent decades exploring higher realms of consciousness. So, you know, I'd just like to share how important your books have been for me, along with the writings from others like David Spangler and Dorothy McLean and Eileen and Peter Caddy. I've spent some time in Findhorn, in Chenoa, in Oroville. You know, these are experiments in connecting with nature, with aspects of nature, with aspects of ourself, aspects of Gaia. We are part of Gaia. And I really honor what you've been doing with not just exploring your own connections with the natural world as part of the multidimensional creation of everything there is. As you say, there's the interface between the physical and the metaphysical, and how we can live with one foot in both dimensions. And so go for it. Go start.
I was just thinking that I like the term Gaia, but I still I'm old-fashioned. I still inclined to call her Mother Earth.
Yes.
Because Gaia is like a word that I'm not familiar with, whereas Mother Earth, I just feel like I'm being nurtured in her arms.
Yeah.
Where I live, I've got about a hectare, probably 2.4 acres of land, forest, which is all garden. And that's where I really make that connection. And I find that if I go into the garden and I'm fully conscious while I'm there, it's like I connect with the spirit of the land. And then when you come out, you know more than when you went in. I don't mean you have more gardening techniques, but I mean that your insight grows into life, because nature and life and humanity is all one. But what I've been talking lately I was until my travels came to an abrupt end last year. What I was talking about was noticing that humanity has become largely subconscious. I think Bruce Lipton says we're about 94% of humanity lives subconsciously. And sub means less than,
Right.
fully, less than fully. So if I'm subnormal, I'm less than fully normal. That might be an asset right now. I'm not sure I want to be normal. But the point is, with humanity being subconscious, the earth and all nature is fully conscious. There is no subconscious in nature. There is no subconscious earth. And so I've been finding metaphysically that the earth does not recognize subconscious humanity. It's like it's in a completely different frequency. And so I've been telling people every day, consciously connect with the earth, consciously be with it. A lot of people say walk barefooted. That's fine, but if you're in Montana in the winter, you would soon lose your toes. But what I have found is if you're conscious, you could be at the top of a 100-story building with concrete and plastic all the way down between you. But if you're conscious of the earth, you connect. Right. Nothing can stop you. But if you walk around barefooted subconsciously, you're still not connected. Although, of course, to be honest, if you went to the trouble of taking your shoes and socks off, then that's a conscious act to walk barefooted. And that would be wonderful. And so anybody who's listening to this, make a point each day of consciously connecting with the earth through the chakras in the soles of your feet, and consciously connect with nature through the chakras in your hands. Consciously do it. And I fully believe that if we go through any sort of crisis, those who are consciously connected with earth and nature will have a different experience than those who are living in a subconscious illusion.
Well, speaking of crisis, as we are all aware in this past year, we've been going through the so-called COVID crisis. And what it brings to mind when you talk about subconscious humanity is that subconscious humanity is like a virus, because a virus doesn't have its own, conscious intelligence. It's simply responding to natural forces. It's not bad, it's not evil, it's nothing to defend against. It has a purpose and a life force that's part of creation too. And to
I
me,
never, come on, keep going,
yeah, to
keep
me,
going.
in a sense, as far as subconscious humanity, this virus represents collective human fear that's rising to the surface, that's on its way out, but has to be confronted and recognized and loved.
That's an interesting one you brought up. I never thought about that. Subconscious humanity like a virus. And I really see what you're saying, because subconscious humanity doesn't really have a choice with fear. Fear is part of the subconscious. And like I say, choose love in my Facebook musings, choose love. But subconsciously, it's very difficult to choose love. You can choose an emotion, but love is not an emotion. Love is the power of creation, which is why I'm writing it all the time. But I'm sort of aware that I've always been aware that love and fear and the subconscious hold hands, and love and being conscious go together. Because did you know you actually can't choose to love somebody subconsciously? There's no such thing as subconscious love. There's no such thing as subconscious truth. There's no such thing as subconscious trust. And you could begin to see the human problem when you get that. No love, no truth, no trust equals fearful and lost. And
Exactly.
so, why the virus is like finding the viruses.
So what do you see in this context could be the purpose of this virus?
Yeah, that's an interesting one, very interesting. The virus is attracted to the human virus. Because I've made a public statement. If I have the choice of the vaccination or euthanasia, I'll take euthanasia. I'll continue on my journey, but at least I'll continue on it whole and not messed up. I've spoken to people, and I get a lot of correspondence from people who are therapists, healers.
What's
The
happening?
ghost in the box.
Well, there's that echo there. Michael, do you have anything else on your computer?
No, I'm in an empty room.
Oh, okay, all right.
No, that was my voice, I'm pretty sure, trying to catch up with me.
Maybe an aspect of yourself from the past.
Probably what is happening, my voice is going to India, then Canada, and then coming back to India again.
Maybe it's an aspect of yourself from the past that's catching up with an aspect.
So what we all see, obviously, is a it's definitely disconcerting.
Yeah, David, if you have any idea what's happening, just send me a chat message.
Perhaps it's because David is laying down with a bit of pneumonia. It's definitely disconcerting. See, that was me. I just said it's definitely disconcerting.
Okay.
I'm not sure how you're.
Michael, do you happen to have YouTube turned on with this program going? No.
No, I don't have anything. No. We don't have any other computers on.
No. Well, let's just keep going.
We'll keep going, yes. It's just a little virus, don't worry about it. So this virus is like causing a transition and a transformation. And we choose. We choose whether we transition out or transform on. If you like, I could just dash away and check that nobody else has got anything on round them.
Sure,
Would you like me to?
go ahead and check that, yeah.
I'll just, won't be a moment.
Strange. Yeah, I just have to apologize for anyone listening because David usually handles this part of the recording, and this is the first time I'm actually doing it this way since David has not been feeling so well today. Yeah, I just have to apologize. Oh, there's the echo again. So David usually handles this part of the recording. This is the first time I'm actually doing it this way since David has not been feeling so well today. There's the echo again. All right, so while Michael returns, oh, here he is.
Which he has done. He has returned. There were two computers on. Like we've got a large house. One end where I've got this room, we have a room set up as a studio, like I'm doing here now, and with a green screen. And I had to spend $1,000 to get to this end of the house with extra boosting to make all this work, Zoom and everything, and Kajabi and all that. And so there were two computers on this end of the house.
Okay, good.
Now we've moved them.
So we've moved them. Echo seems to have gone.
And the echo might have gone, yes, that's good.
Yay.
So it wasn't a virus.
Well, you were speaking about the virus and the jab in context of humanity as a subconscious culture.
Yeah, I think that, where we're at is inevitable. I see this as being inevitable. Over the last 10 years, in my travels around the world and in my teaching and my intensives, I've been telling people that I figured around about 2020, there would be a pandemic of dementia. That's what I thought. That's what I said. And I was pretty sure it'd be dementia because the pineal has become so petrified and tiny and minute. It's been shrinking over the years that I expected a problem. Well, then the COVID, the coronavirus came along, and I thought that I was wrong. But now I see, with the tremendous fear in the mainstream humanity, fear and dementia hold hands. They definitely go together. And so I thought, well, in a different way from what I expected, there is a form of craziness, dementia taking place in humanity, but it's instigated by fear, which I really didn't expect. And when I look at this, if you look at the big picture, and you look back over a few thousand years, when this all began, this control of humanity, when religion was almost created to separate humans, one of us, from God. Let's put an intermediary in between. Let's call him a priest, and he'll take our messages to God. Like we can't do it together. And so that created the beginnings of a separation from our divine connection with God. It began to remove that. Then in schools and in universities, they created a disconnection between humanity and nature. So we were humanity and nature, two different things. And the illusion grew stronger and stronger and stronger. Now, I don't know whether you've noticed, I'm sure you have, because you're a very astute man. I'm sure you've noticed that humanity in its subconscious state has developed a very powerful victim consciousness. every time we see a wildlife documentary and a lion kills a beautiful gazelle or a zebra, we identify with the zebra being killed. We don't say, go for it, lion, twist, rip his guts out. We feel sympathy and compassion for the zebra. And that's good, but it's also a reflection of our victim consciousness. We've developed a very powerful victim consciousness. Well, the principles are, whatever you are, you will attract. And so a victim consciousness attracts and creates a victimizer. And the victimizer is the cabal, the whole so-called Illuminati. I don't think they're very illumined, but that's beside the point. So we created that ourselves, because it's not like there are separate people, it's all one humanity. So consciousness is forever creating. And so with the mass in that subconscious state, victim consciousness, we created the victimizer. Now, since probably in the last 100 years, but in 2012, the energy, the frequency really lifted. And now it's going up steady. So it's met the point where the Illuminati or the cabals holding down the energy through fear has hit the rising energy of love, because all this chaos, I've been particularly noticed, is love driven. It's absolutely love driven. And so they clash, and we're now right in that point where they're clashing. The next 100 weeks are going to be pretty interesting, and they're not going to be very comfortable.
Yes. Well, I totally see what you're describing, the clash of energy between love and fear. And it's like a choice that we're making collectively. Do we choose love? Do we choose fear? And that's always the choice. Every moment of our life is a choice.
Every moment, yeah.
And we've collectively...
Except, as we've said, if you're subconscious, you don't have a choice. The program runs you. You just follow the program. The more of the same, more of the same, more of the same. It's like I've sort of on Facebook, I'm almost giving up trying to convince people, because those who are, they see it. Those who don't see it by now don't intend to see it. They don't want to see it. So I'm now being more supportive of the transition and basically saying the only thing to do is focus towards love.
And this is the journey of waking up. So waking up is basically moving from the subconscious to the superconscious, to recognizing who we are as multidimensional beings who are not stuck in the program, but are everything and include everything.
This is why I'm doing an online course, The Great Awakening. This is the Great Awakening. We've done it one by one for centuries. You know, you and I, we went through our awakening quite a while back, but now there's coming more en masse. There's more and more people awakening, and a lot of them see this as something, how do you survive it? And I see it as a transformation. And so in the Great Awakening, that online course, I'm sort of going to show people and tell people, this is how you do it. You can get through this. In fact, you can thrive in it.
You can, yes. And when you look at the big picture and look at this in terms of a metamorphosis, you know, as the caterpillar goes through the cocooning phase, it literally becomes a cosmic soup. It loses its identity, it loses its physical structures, it loses any sense of past or future. It's completely immersed in that moment within the cocoon as a transitional being with no idea where it's going, no idea what's coming, but somehow in the midst of that.
Yeah, it's interesting because death goes in that cocoon and destructures the old. We call that destruction. And the old has to be destructured before the new can begin to do the reconstructing, the restructuring. And who wants to be a caterpillar eating cabbage leaves forever? You know, I'd rather have my wings and fly away, thank you, and feed on the nectar of truth.
Yeah. Well, I liked what you said about the difference between living from the mind, living from the intellect, and living from this natural intelligence that we are already part of. That's the difference between shifting out from primarily left brain consciousness to whole brain consciousness. So it's not about just right,
Yeah,
just left, but whole brain consciousness, where we can join the community of Gaia or Mother Earth as one with it.
yeah. The left brain we needed, of course, but it's become so dominant. And as I look back metaphysically into the past, I realize that even our schools and universities, the whole program was to bring the left brain dominant. I mean, we could have had an education system where the left and right grew together, where the energy went to both, but it didn't. Everything is about learning by rote, learning through the left brain. And I realized that's deliberate. It's always been deliberate. It's just not the way, it could have been done correctly. It's like today, we have a lot of electronic gadgets. Most of those gadgets are harmful. The microwave, the cell phone, they all have harmful energy to us. Are you going to tell me that science couldn't have created ones that were neutral or beneficial? Of course they could. It's just the way we're all the time being pushed and fed and led. There is an amazing process going on that has led us into this situation for thousands of years. And like a lot of sheep, we just followed into it. About 30 years ago, my oldest son, Duncan, he's the owner of Nexus, the Nexus magazine, he talked to me about all this. And I said, Duncan, don't talk silly. This is just conspiracy theory. I said, this is just conspiracy theory. He said, that's right, Dad, stick your head in the sand and pretend to be spiritual. Wow. And I felt a bit hurt, but that continued for another 10, 15 years. And I just thought conspiracy theory. Then one day on the internet, I began to realize, okay, I'm reading what I want to read to support what I believe. So I'm going to read the other side of the story. And my brain didn't want to read it. I listened to videos, I read articles about the conspiracy that isn't a theory, the conspiracy that is a reality. And the more I went into it, the more I had to realize, oh my God, I've been one of the idiots who just believed the media. And then I realized I grew up. My parents were right because they were parents. And then as you get older, you realize maybe they're not right every time. But the media tells you the truth because it's the media, and the government care for you and the government look after you. And gradually you begin to realize, hey, this has got flaws in it. It's not necessarily correct. My parents have problems just the same as everybody else. The school is vulnerable to the type of teachers it has. Governments are seriously flawed human beings, and that's why they're in government. And I began to realize, eventually I had to stop and say, okay, well, I'm sorry, but I turned right around. And I began to write it on Facebook. And a lot of my followers just left. Apparently I went down the rabbit hole.
I've had that same experience. Yeah. Well, I call myself, sorry.
Don't you remember though, Alice went down the rabbit hole. Alice in Wonderland. And down the rabbit hole was Wonderland.
Yes.
And I prefer Wonderland than to Illusion Land.
Exactly. And Michael, it's like I call myself a conspiracy realist. And it's not easy. It's not easy for anybody to see the depths of human evil, because we look at ourselves, at least when we look at ourselves personally, we want to imagine ourselves as good, intelligent, honorable beings. But when you look into the depths of what we are capable of as humans, when we go into the collective darkness, the dungeons, and see what we're capable of. It's neither intelligent, compassionate, loving in any way. We've become the virus. So what it tells me, and here's where we get into this, the struggle between paradigms. So on the one hand, we have this paradigm of duality, dark and light, good and evil. And on the other hand, we have the natural experience of who we are as multidimensional, superconscious love. We're not even loving, we are love. That's nature. So how do you reconcile these two paradigms in those of us who are awakening?
I don't think they do reconcile. I think they're moving on to different timelines. I don't think they're going to get together and hug anytime soon. It's like the old paradigm. See how I see the two, as the timelines move apart, people who leave now, particularly from the jab and the various resistance to change, because that's all that's going on. And we've had for centuries a resistance to change. We do not like change. We're programmed to more of the same. And so as far as I can see it, this great cycle has come to an end and a new one is already beginning, which I perceive as the sixth great cycle of about 200,000 years. And so these people will move into that at a higher frequency. Every new cycle is a higher frequency, so the potential is greater, but they will have exactly the same consciousness. And so it's there again to continue growing. Whereas the people in a new paradigm, opening up new parameters of growth, leaving behind the old way, will move on to a timeline that will be an ascending spiral rather than a continuing cycle.
Exactly.
Because we were designed to be on the spiral of life, not on the cycle. And so cycles on a spiral, yes, but cycles that never ascend. And I mean, we've come to the end of these cycles before, and every time it's been a disaster. But every time humanity has lost the plot. I mean, how many people really know if I said, you're a human being, what is that? They would immediately say, well, I'm a body, I have a personality, and go to that. And sometimes one of the things I often say is, in this duality you mentioned, we have the duality. I have a word that I play with, individuality. Individuality. We all like to be individuals. Individuality. So if you slow it down, divided duality.
Okay.
Divided duality. And what is the division? So on this side, we'll say we have physical personality, mortal. On this side, we have metaphysical, immortal, and doesn't need a personality. But we give 99.9% of our focus on the physical personality, which has a very short lifespan. We give zero focus to the metaphysical immortal that we actually are. And a long time ago, I began to look at this, and so I began to give more energy to the metaphysical. Today, I would say I operate probably 60% physical and 40% metaphysical. While I've got a body, that's about as close as I'm going to get. But it allows me to see things in a very different way, a different perspective.
Right.
And but then again, when you look at it, our pineal is at an accident. It's been shrinking. It's been under attack. Somebody once told me, I don't know whether this would get censored, but in the Catholic Church, when they do the baptism, they cut down the energy to the pineal. And there are people who go around in Europe reopening it. But all I know is that when I have visited the Paleolithic period, hunter-gatherers, They were nowhere, they were not as intellectual as us, but seriously more intelligent because they're more conscious. Their pineals were about that size, the size of a bean. Ours is now the size of a grain of rice and shrinking.
Yeah.
And when you have people with dementia, when they die of dementia and they have permission to look at the brain and to look at the pineal, they find that the corpus callosum, which connects the two hemispheres of the brain, is atrophying and has less life in it, and that the pineal is shrinking through the invasion of negative thinking, of a complete lack of trust, a complete loss of self-reliance, and under the influence of like chlorine and all those. And so we're heading, in a way, devolving instead of evolving.
Well, that's the exact recipe of what we're experiencing in the last year and a half. Fear shrinks the pineal, trust expands it. And you know, what comes to me is one of my teachers, Sri Aurobindo, has been saying that, you know, this particular cycle, we're looking at the big picture perspective. Earlier cycles have been about what you were saying, there's death and there's collapse, there's rise of civilizations and collapse, extinction cycles and rebirth. But this particular cycle that the entire universe is now moving into multidimensionally has nothing to do with death and rebirth and death and destruction. It's a continual spiral, like you were mentioning, and it's a rising spiral. And this transition that we're making as we go through the cocooning is the entry into the seventh universe. So it's like, you know, dark and light are no longer opposing each other. They're aspects of each other, forcing us to face ourselves fully so we can become present.
Thank you. I had the two ends of that, but you've just connected it for me. You've just given me the connection. I could see the two ends, but I didn't see the connection. That's great. Wonderful. Yeah, that feels so right.
Yeah.
Feels so right, because the old cycle of people call it death and rebirth. Of course, it isn't. It's a continuing story of the soul. But every time, you know, some people say to me, how come I can't remember any of my last lives? I say to them, if you did remember, you're having quite enough trouble with this one. You really don't need to remember them.
Right.
But if you're conscious, then you can just continue remembering everything. I've been through so many of my past lives, and they don't give me any trauma. They just allow me to see the bigger picture of who I am.
Yeah.
But if I didn't have that consciousness, it would be just more trauma.
Exactly. You know, I have not been able to remember past lifetimes, and I don't think that's important for me at this point.
I agree.
What seems important is expanding the present, or growing into not even the present, but growing into presence. And
I agree. I didn't want all mine, but I didn't seem to have a choice. I kept going into these experiences, and I said, well, I really don't want this, because they were painful. But what it did tell me, one of the things it did tell me, was that, you know, I have had a lot of pain through many lives, and I have an enormous fear in this life. Now, to give it a metaphor, there was like this huge wall that, in my developing relationship with nature and myself, I couldn't climb it. I was completely unable to climb it because I was too crippled by fear, and I could not climb it. And an amazing thing happened. What I would do is have an experience of a past life, and I couldn't believe it because the fear wouldn't let me believe it. But my late wife, Trini, who you met, I said to her one day, I need like a surrogate. If I tell you what my experience, I need you to believe it for me. And she said, well, that's ridiculous. I said, no, I can't the fear is too great. I cannot get past it. But if you believe it for me, it will work because we're very close. She said, okay, I can do that. And so for about a year, I shared my experiences with her and she believed it for me. And I said, if you don't believe it, I will know. I've only got to look at you. And I would say to her, do you believe me? And she'd look at me and she did believe me. And there came one day, one moment when suddenly I was sitting on the top of the wall and I realized that she'd helped me to get there without me realizing I was climbing. And I saw then, if you're blessed with that sort of partnership, what two people together spiritually can achieve in helping each other past their fears. And it was like an incredible experience. And once I was on top of the wall, I slipped down the other side and I thought, okay. And then the time came when fear was finished. It was done. I don't have it in my life. You know, I have no fear of death. I have no fear of anything. I just don't have it. And you realize, wow, what an incredible thing it is, because it doesn't exist. And yet we create it, and we've held on to its reality for so long. It's like an overwhelming, it is the illusion.
Exactly.
Once fear is gone, the illusion dissolves.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that, Michael. You know, it sounds strange when you say that to people, I don't have fear, because people will always point at, well, you know, how can you be fear? And I feel like the more present we become, the more fearless we also become. And it's natural. It's because then there's nothing to attack. There's nothing to that can hurt you, harm you in any way. And you're part of all of that, because that's what presence is. You're out of linear time where there's a past, there's a future, there's a present, tiny, minuscule present moment. And you're expanded into this all-encompassing total presence where you are part of everything there is. Everything you see, you are, you become, you experience. And so how can there be fear in that recognition?
Isn't it wonderful to be on the same page with a person? My late wife died in 2006, Trini, and an old friend who had been organising me as a speaker in America. She, a long-time friend, we married, we fell in love and married, and it's something I so value, that we can connect. We're on the same page. I've got that connection with a human being in my daily life, and that is what a blessing that is.
Absolutely.
Because I don't say I don't have fear to individuals anymore. I might say it to a large group, but I just don't tell an individual, because they look at you, they don't believe it, because they can't believe that. Like, how is that possible?
And that's one thing about nature that you describe. You know, I loved your book, Entering the Secret World of Nature. And one thing you say there is that animals, plants, minerals, all of nature, there's no fear. There's no possibility of fear. And what we project as fear is simply the cycle of life, because there's no fear of death, there's no fear of dissolution. It's simply a recognition that there's one living web and we are part of that.
I remember reading a lovely story a number of years ago, an American native Indian in America. She made a living by catching rattlesnakes in the desert. And then she had like a large room with a glass barrier between her and the audience. And so it wouldn't hold more than 20 or 30 people. And they would sit there, and on her side of the glass, which was only about a meter high, there was like sand and rocks. And she would talk about snakes, and she would tell people every month the snakes are taken back into the desert, and then I catch new ones. And she would walk around in her dress and bare feet, and she would move the rattlesnakes with her feet and stroke them, and just like that. And people were sort of sitting there thinking they must have had their fangs pulled out and everything like that. She said, these are released back into the wild every month, brand new ones. She said, why don't they bite me? I have no fear. These are my brothers and sisters.
Yes.
These are me. rattlesnakes don't bite each other. And then she would invite somebody, come and step up to the glass barrier. And so people would step up, and the nearest rattlesnake straight out would latch and would bite at them. And she'd say, you have fear. The rattlesnake is not biting you, it's biting at fear. And how I have been into snakes, metaphysically, I've gone into snakes. And it's an amazing thing. It's like a human fear is like an absolute aberration of nature. It's like it shouldn't exist. It is something in nature that is foul and alien, and kill it, get rid of it. Ugh, horrible. That's human fear, because it's completely alien in nature. Nature hasn't got fear because fear is based in our negative imagination. Whereas nothing in nature has imagination. I often say nature follows the blueprint of its own consciousness and continues, whereas we are creating the blueprint of our consciousness, and it's the blueprint in the moment.
And that's a gift as well as a curse.
Yes.
The power of imagination.
It's a gift. It's a complete gift. It's a complete gift. It's just difficult to unwrap.
Right. Well, it's funny how humans have projected our fear onto other species, whether it's snakes, whether it's sharks, whether it's wolves, whether it's spiders. And they're some of the most beautiful of all beings. Anna Breitenbach, you know, she is such a beautiful being in her ability to communicate and receive messages and enter into the world of nature just like you do. And what she says about sharks, I remember one of her talks about, you know, when someone asked her a question about the great whites in Australia. She said, they're not coming after you. They're coming after your fear. They're simply curious. They can sense the pheromones of fear, or if that's what it's called. And so they're curious. They come up and they're, you know, their touch is simply, it's like a curiosity, because they're not used to this in their world. And because when there's scarcity, there's also competition. And humans have learned how to compete with each other because we imagine ourselves, we imagine the world as scarcity. And so that competition plus the fear creates a curiosity.
It's interesting what you're saying there, because I often, when I'm talking about nature, I often say, there's no competition in nature. And people immediately say, but of course there is. So sorry, that's a human view from the intellect. There is no competition in nature. It's perfect cooperation. Like the moving of consciousness, all the time moving consciousness. I said it doesn't have competition any more than it has fear. But Anna, when I was met her in South Africa, she took Karen and I to meet Spirit, the leopard.
Oh, yes.
The black panther, the leopard. And Spirit is like 14 or 15 when I met him. He's getting on. He's got his huge rock, and he sits on there in very regal majesty, looking around. The younger ones are there with him that he was introduced to. And Spirit, I found an easy animal to talk with, to communicate with. And he was very quite articulate. I mean, okay, that takes place, but he was very open to communicating with the humans. Like he said, this doesn't happen too often. But Anna is the real deal. She is so good at that. She is very, very good. I thought I was good, but I moved my focus to the most difficult animal that's possible to communicate with, and that's humans. And she stayed with animals, and she said, there's no lies or deceit in animals. Humans, that's the tricky one. I said, yeah, you're right.
Well, I'd like to share a quick experience. This was a few years ago. I was in North India in the mountains and near Rishikesh. And I was out for a walk at night, and I heard some sounds, and I went towards that. And all of a sudden, there was this wild elephant, male, huge, coming towards me. He had broken down a wall to cross a road. And the moment I saw him, and he was just a few yards away. And the moment I saw him, there was not one iota of fear. There was just this awe, this wonder, this sense of recognizing a brother, this beauty that was in front of me, this wildness. And what happened with me is I was in just total awe. And so we communed. I won't say communicated, we communed for maybe a minute or so. And then he continued on. He broke down another wall, went down into the village. I heard the next day that it was a so-called, rogue elephant that had gone must and was terrorizing the entire village, breaking down walls and hurting people. And, when I met him, there was none of that, because on an energy level, there was no fear, there was no separation. It was just recognition, respect, and oneness. And I know that's how you live your life. The book, Entering the Secret World of Nature and Others.
That's a beautiful story. Have you read The Elephant Whisperer?
No.
It's a book you must get. I'm sorry, I've forgotten the name of the man who wrote it. He is not the whisperer. The elephant is the whisperer. It is a beautiful, beautiful book. You will love it. Elephant Whisperer. You must get that. Yeah. That is a must. It's an astonishing book. But I had a similar thing once with a snake years ago when I was younger and not quite so nice as I am today. I was on my farm in Tasmania, and I wanted to shoot a rabbit or two to eat for my evening meal next day. And so I was down in the creek in the boggy area, and I saw a rabbit, and I had a .22 rifle, and I got shorts on. And those days, the fashion was shorts were so short, they weren't much better than bathing costume. So I had my work shorts on, and I knelt down and aimed at the rabbit. And as I was aiming, I thought, it suddenly occurred to me, something moved. And so I looked down carefully, and where my knee had gone down, it was right next to a 5-foot tiger snake.
Wow.
Tiger snakes have enough, their venom is toxic enough to kill about 50 people, one bite. So I looked, and there's my knee, and the tiger snake are touching, literally. I thought, oh God. And so I just kept looking, and gradually he came up. He reared up until his face was level with mine, which is quite a long way up. And his hood, he'd flattened out into a hood. In normal state, there's no hood. But when they're angry, there's a hood.
Like a cobra.
It's like a cobra, but the cobra has the hood all the time, more or less. But the tiger snake, it's not as exaggerated as a cobra, but there is a slight hood. And he's looking at me, and his tongue was flicking out. And I knew if he bit me, I mean, that's it. You might as well just sit down and say, well, goodbye world, because that was it. And yet, I've never been afraid of snakes. I've never had a fear of snakes. And I'm looking at it, and it's looking at me. And all I could think was, God, you're so beautiful. God, you're so beautiful. I thought, what a beautiful creature. And I think I was too stupid to be frightened.
Yeah.
And I just saw how beautiful it was. And we looked like this, it felt like a half an hour, it might have been a minute. We're looking at each other. And then gradually it went back down, and his hood dropped away, and it went back down and slowly moved away. And the rabbit had gone, and I walked back up to the house and thought, wow, what an incredible encounter. Because it was beautiful. A bit like your elephant. It decided he's harmless.
Yeah. I've had some encounters with wild snakes, and it's just the same, just, the beauty of their being. There's something about their connection with the earth, vibrationally, that when the fear is gone, we become conscious of that. We can listen to the voice of the earth through them.
Yeah, I was in Africa once, walking along toward the Cape of Good Hope. And I was on the path walking it, and my wife was on the train going along because she'd hurt her knee. And so I said, I'll see you there. And I'm walking along, and there's a puff adder. As I come round the corner, there's a puff adder laying right across the path in the sun, big black and yellow thing. And there was a woman screaming and screaming away. And I said to her, whoa, whoa. And she was a black African, and she didn't stop screaming. So then I thought, I'll show her that it's okay. So I knelt down next to the snake and stroked it because I'm not afraid of them, and it liked it. And I stroked it. She now screamed twice as loud and was joined by another woman screaming because they decided they had a snake and a mad white man on the path. And so I picked the snake up and apologized on behalf of humanity and put it in the scrub alongside the path, and it slithered away. The women went round me as if I was a monster. They walked a wide circle around me, not near me. Yeah. I had to laugh. I mean, I thought, geez, so what do they think? I'm a snake now? People are so strange.
People have projected all the worst qualities onto each other and onto animals. And this is what creates, look at Jaws, the movie. And look at what humans do to sharks just for their fins.
Oh, don't.
It's such a, it's like we've projected and then we've victimized them rather than seeing that in ourselves.
I mean, humanity, I almost sometimes feel ashamed to be a human. Some of the stuff that's going on now. I mean, in our area, in Australia, people buy something from Amazon and it's delivered in a parcel to the front door. Obviously, they're not there. A car pulls up, a woman or man runs out, grabs a parcel, runs back, puts it in the car and speeds away. I mean, what is wrong with us?
No connection.
This is common now. This is common.
Yeah.
Going back to nature, you'll love this little story. I was told this in South Africa. A woman told me, the mother, she said, when my daughter was about 5, she said she had a friend down the garden. And she said, I didn't know what it was. It was a secret friend, but every morning when we made porridge, could she have some for a friend? So she said, I would put some in a cup, and she'd hold the handle and take a spoon, and off she'd go down the garden. When she came back, there was no porridge. And she said this went on for 2 or 3 weeks, and she talked to her husband about it. And he said, well, what is it? What's going on? Does she tip it out? And she said, I don't know. It's a big garden, and she couldn't see it. So one morning, she said, I followed her. Without her knowing, I hid and followed her. She went down the end of the garden, banged on the cup with a spoon, and she said, to my horror, an enormous Cape cobra reared up in front of her, obviously taller than her, and bent over. And she said, hello, I bought your porridge. And she started spooning porridge into his mouth. And the cobra took the porridge and swallowed it. And then she said, after a while, the cobra had enough. And the little girl smacks it on the side of the head. You haven't finished yet. And gives it a little smack on the side of the head, and it opens its mouth and she puts another one in.
Yeah.
And she said she nearly died watching that. She said, I nearly died. My heart was thumping away. But she said, how could that happen? I said, because her innocence was complete. There was no fear, no harm, absolutely harmless she was. And the snake knew it, far too big for a meal. And so they connected.
Yeah.
And she said we had to tell her. And sadly, they had to tell her that you can't do that with all snakes. Whether I like that or not.
Especially when she's in the field of fear from other humans.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's very common in India. People, villagers who are innocent at heart, have that relationship with snakes, with wild animals. And very rarely are they harmed. And if they are, then it's simply a part of the cycle of life.
In Australia, if it moves, shoot it. If it doesn't move, chop it down.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's a Western mindset, that's causing all the separation, all the fear, and it
Yeah.
feeds itself. You're speaking of South Africa, Michael, and I'm reminded of visiting my friend Linda at this
Predator Jones.
in
Oh, another one.
Mawati, the White Lion Sanctuary. Have you met her?
What's her name? Linda?
Linda, I can't remember her last name now, but she has
I
a
know Linda.
sanctuary. It's
I
pretty
know
close
Linda
to
Tallington
Kruger.
Jones.
Hmm. Yeah.
You
Well,
know Linda Tallington Jones?
sorry.
You know Linda Tallington Jones?
No, and she did your forward, I know, but no, I've never met her.
Okay, no. So I don't know this Linda. No, in Africa,
Wish I remembered
no.
her last name. But anyway, she has this sanctuary that she created for white lions, which are to
Right.
the Sangomas in Africa. They represent the soul of Africa. Very
Yeah.
different energetically from the tawny lions. And I remember
Right.
my first encounter with these twin male lions. They were teenagers, in our years.
Yeah.
And they were just like 6 feet away from me. I was in the Jeep.
I
Uh,
know the feeling.
Linda was with me, and she gave me permission to step out of the Jeep. And she doesn't do that with everybody. And so I sat down in the grass with them, in front of them, and just entered their being. And
Lovely.
I still carry that presence with me. It's just such a beautiful, magnetic,
Mm.
powerful, noble, and divine presence. When I
Yeah.
look at and blue eyes, white, completely white with blue eyes, it's a different species. And it's like
Yeah.
they just entered right into my heart. And I still feel them, I still carry them. And in a way, it's like they represent what humans have forgotten.
Are they still able to continue breeding?
Yeah, yeah. There's not very many of
Lovely.
them. So the park is stocked with wildebeest and with giraffes and buffalo. So they feed
Wow.
directly and naturally. But
Yeah.
there's a limit to how much that land can hold.
That's lovely. Lovely. I was in Netherlands, and I was invited if I would like to see. They collect all the tigers in one sanctuary
Hmm.
from circuses and places where they've been. Anyway, they had about 50 tigers or more, and
Hmm.
some of them they have a breeding program, and some of them had been castrated when they were young
Hmm.
because of their breed line, and I couldn't believe the size of them. And
Hmm.
they had a few lions there that had been males that had been castrated because they weren't needed for breeding. They
Hmm.
live out their whole life. And so I said to the guy, I said, they're the biggest lionesses I've ever seen in my life.
Hmm.
And he laughed. He said, they're not lionesses, they're lions. When they're castrated, they don't
Oh,
grow a
everything
male.
falls off. Wow.
They don't grow a male.
Wow.
And their energy was very changed.
Hmm.
Now, I'm not saying it was for the better or worse,
Hmm.
but it was very different. They were somehow a bit more benign,
Hmm.
but they were just male lions and a few male tigers that had been castrated, but the size of them. And there was a chain link fence between us.
Hmm.
And I stood one side, and this vast neutered lion is on the other side,
Hmm.
reared up with his paws above me.
Huh.
And I got a sense of the power of a
Yeah.
lion. I thought,
Yeah.
oh my God. I mean, I felt like a little fly in front of a human. It was just huge,
Hmm. Wow.
enormous.
Wow.
And I thought, oh my God, we humans, this puts you in your right place.
Right. Right. Do you know
It
Kevin
was a
Richardson?
hmm?
Do you know Kevin Richardson?
No.
Yeah, I've watched videos of him. I don't know him on YouTube, where he's playing with lions, and just
Yeah.
the naturalness of the play. And he's grown up
I've
with them, so these are
I've
friends.
I've seen YouTube Isn't it wonderful?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh. And it's
Mm.
like people who swim with the wolves and
Mm.
they just sit with the wolves and they're fine. I've
Yes,
often thought,
yes,
I don't know how I'd go.
yeah.
My
Oh,
your life.
Michael.
I was in a zoo. I don't know where I was because I
Mm.
like to visit zoos because zoos today educate children
Yeah.
and they educate them towards compassion and care and preservation. So I like zoos. And this zoo, there was an enormous male orangutan,
Mm.
and he was sitting in a glass enclosure where people would look at him with his back to everybody. And I stood there for 10 minutes looking at him, and I thought, yeah, we really are a nuisance, aren't we? You know, this beautiful creature, this enormous male orangutan, fully grown.
Mm.
And I said to him, will you just turn round? I'd like to see you face to face.
Mm.
Just please turn round, if you would. And I
Mm.
kept this thought going. And
Mm.
finally, after another 5 minutes, there was nobody there. He turned round and looked at me,
Mm.
and his whole expression said, satisfied? And we held that for about 10 seconds, and then
Mm.
he turned round. That
Mm.
10 seconds was very powerful.
I bet.
He made full eye contact, which is
Mm.
unusual.
Mm.
And it's like it's like he was the far the superior creature, and like a grandfather turning around to his child and saying, "Please don't bother me." It's
Mm.
like satisfied.
Mm.
It
Yeah.
really put me in my
Mm.
place.
Yeah. Well, I've been swimming with dolphins every year in the Red Sea in Egypt.
Never done that.
And it's such an amazing experience. There's a pod of about 300 or 400, and they're not always there. They're often out hunting in the deep sea, and then they come back to this shallow coral reef, which is protected from sharks and where they can have their young ones. And I remember the times I've been with them. Often, the first time I'm there with a new pod, there's a time of testing, and they're feeling my energy. I'm feeling their energy. Then there comes a time when sometimes it's two, sometimes three, four elders. I call them elders. They swim right up and make direct eye contact. And so there may be two on this side, two on this side, and we're swimming together under and over with, constant eye contact for a few minutes. And then after that, it's like the entire pod comes up. Young ones, mothers, babies, and there's a sense of absolute trust and connectedness, and it's just so precious. And I take people there every year to have encounters, and everybody experiences that, because part of the training is to step out of becoming of trying to be human, because they don't see themselves as dolphins, they simply are. We are so identified with being human that it acts like a barrier to
You
connection.
see, one dolphin perceives you. They don't work through the intellect, they work
Mm.
through intelligence and perception. And so one dolphin perceives you, and because they're so connected, they don't have an intellectual separation. The whole pod has perceived you.
Yes.
Whereas us, we just all live in separation and isolation.
Yeah.
We don't have that. We don't have that experience. I remember reading once about a group of scientists who were trying to crack the code of the language of dolphins, and they spent about 6 years and got it. So they figured they could communicate with dolphins. And
Mm.
when they went to the place the next morning, every dolphin had changed its language. Their whole language that they had was obsolete. It was
Mm.
completely changed.
Interesting.
And I read that. I thought, yeah, right. This is the intellect trying to meet with intelligence.
Well, they've been trying to teach us their language for a long time, and we don't learn.
Yeah, yeah. Their language is the language of the heart.
Mm.
Unfortunately, that should be our language, and with many people it is. But I'm afraid with the mass, it is no longer the language.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, Michael, give us some pointers. maybe you want to speak a little bit about your last book, Entering the Secret World of Nature. You speak about the difference between listening and hearing, between looking and seeing, between the intellect and intelligence. How do we cross that barrier?
That's with difficulty.
Mm.
I, quite a long time ago now, 20 or more years ago, I realized that nature doesn't need to learn to speak. Humanity needs to learn to listen. And I had realized and learned that if an animal's listening, it's completely in the moment. And I realized that we are thinking, and you can only think your way out of the moment. It's impossible to think your way into the moment, which is the benefit of meditation. It takes you into the moment. Unfortunately, most people who meditate leave it behind. They walk away and leave the meditation in the room or in the chair or under the blanket. Whereas the idea is to take your meditation into your daily life. But anyway, and so I wanted to learn to listen. And learning to listen, what can you do? You can gradually come quieter and quieter until you're listening. And I thought, well, how do I do this? Anyway, so this was in, I mentioned in my first book, Talking of Nature, I had a bridge board. Do you know, I wrote that over 40 years ago.
Mm.
Oh,
That's the
scary.
first one I read.
It's scary. 40 years ago. My God. Anyway, actually a bit more, 43 years ago. Anyway, no, about 40. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Yes, no, it's more than that. Anyway, let's not go there. And so it's a long time ago. And I would sit on my bridge board listening to the river because I had this feeling that the river had enormous wisdom and I wanted to tap into it. And I'd hear all the sounds around me, all traffic going by and people shouting and children laughing. But it was reasonably in the country and I just wanted to listen. And I would spend some days an hour, some days 2 minutes, some days 10 minutes, just depending on the weather and the circumstances. But listening, and all I could hear was my thoughts mocking me. That's all I could hear. And the more I tried to listen, the more my thoughts speeded up. And so it was just like listening to a horrible cacophony of sound in my head. But I persisted. I decided I'm going to do this. And so 1 year went, the second year went, the third year went, the fourth year went. I was still nowhere. And I was thinking, oh my God, this is, I still wasn't going to give up. But anyway, in the fifth year, I'm sitting by the river, with the river, and I suddenly had the realization of silence. And eventually the river spoke to me. And it was in the fifth year. And when I tell people, learn to listen, I realize they're not going to do that. So what I always say now is, if you want to learn to listen, put on a music that you enjoy, softly, gentle, soft music, and put it on for 5 minutes and give yourself 5 minutes to listen. The first 3 or 4 months, your thinking will speed up because you cannot think and listen. Thinking takes you out of the moment. Listening has to be a conscious act in the moment. It's fully conscious. You can't listen subconsciously. You can hear subconsciously, but you can't listen subconsciously. And people don't get that. They just don't get it. My brother's older than me. He's brilliant, intellectually brilliant. He doesn't get it. If I can hear, it's because I'm listening. I say to him, I've given up. I've given up. I just leave it now. I've given up. I cannot get him to see that hearing and listening are completely different things. Because he thinks if he can hear, it's because he's listening. And I let it go. And so this ability to listen. So you're listening to music. When you can eventually, somewhere down 6 months down the track, you get 10 seconds and you realize you're listening for 10 seconds. celebrations. When you can do a minute, go out and take your family and treat them, because you are now 1 in a million in human beings. And the amazing thing is, when you learn to listen, you come into the moment. And there you meet with conscious intelligence. And so as you listen, your knowing, your insights, your intuition, and your imagination all move into higher levels of consciousness. And so your inner knowing grows just by listening to music. And people say, but music can't teach you. I say, no, but the moment of being conscious, that's where everything that is.
Yeah.
And so knowing grows. And but to convey that to people, they can hear it all, but I've long ago realized it's a concept until you do it. And when you actually master it, then it's no longer a concept. It's like seeing. We go outside, and most people subconsciously see flat. They don't. They're looking, and 3 dimension is all around them, but they don't see any longer in depth. So they go in an art gallery and they see an artist who's got a little fence that starts off big and gets smaller and smaller. And they say, wow, look at the depth of that painting. It's not as deep as everyday life, but people don't see it anymore. And so we look at and don't see. And so in our way of connecting with nature, we need to have to learn to listen, to look at and see. And then to be able to close our eyes and move into perceiving. Like metaphysically, one of the things I had to teach myself to do when I travel in my metaphysical body, I still got a 2-eye focus. And it persists because it's like a long, incredibly deeply implanted habit to look out through 2 eyes. But when I'm metaphysical, I could see anywhere or anywhen, and I could 360. So then I developed that ability to do that. Now I also allow myself to have a 2-eye focus and the perception. But growing the perception in your physical life, walking in the garden, is difficult because we're so caught up in 2-eye focus, looking through 2 eyes. And so it's a journey actually in the end into self, because who I am and who you are and what nature is on the planet, it's all one. It's all one energy.
Yeah.
And gradually, for me, I'm a gardener, and I've been a keen gardener all my life. At 6 years of age, my father he came home with 12 tomato plants. He gave me 6, and I set mine, and he put his 6 in alongside. And every day I would look at mine and look at his. And after about a month, his were twice as big as mine. And mine didn't look very good at all. And I was crying. I was only a little kid, and I cried. He said, "What's wrong? My tomato plants are growing." And so he came down and we had a look. He said, "Well, that's strange. I can't understand it." "Neither can I. Every day I pull them out of the ground and look, but the roots aren't growing." I said, "Okay, now we get it." And then he said, "You know what? You put the tomato plants in the ground, leave them, and trust. You trust that they will grow." And I did it. And when his tomatoes were finished, mine were just coming on. So we had a nice sequence of tomatoes. And from that moment, I was hooked. One, you don't look at the roots every day. And 2, if you just trust, this fruit appears. Right. And I think that connected me with trust in a very interesting way. But I was hooked, and I've been a gardener ever since. But when I go out in the garden, I always consider I'm connecting with the spirit of the land.
Yeah.
And I like to be a conscious gardener. Why I wrote a book, Conscious Gardening. You can be a brilliant gardener subconsciously, but you never make that connection that takes you into a different level in your relationship with nature. And that's what I value.
And that story about the roots, I think, is really metaphorical, because, roots are invisible. We don't see them. We tend to focus on the branches and the sun, the wind. But what's happening beneath the surface is just as important, if not more. Our connection
Oh,
with Mother Earth, that
it's more
pristine
important.
primal connection with Mother Earth is behind everything.
Yes, I mean, roots, trees have roots. We should long ago have developed a conscious connection with the earth.
Mm.
So our roots are metaphysical and reaching and embracing and realizing that this earth is living. This earth is our substance. I'm convinced that if we reach the time when there's, in our crisis, current crisis, and I really mean this, if we reach the time, which is very likely, no distribution of food,
Mm-hmm.
because once the lines of distribution collapse, it doesn't matter how much food there is, nobody's getting it. It won't reach the supermarkets, it won't reach the shops, it won't reach the people. And most people don't grow their own. They don't have the means. But if a person was to make sure they get fresh water and drink that water consciously, knowing that they're drinking the elixir of life, and if they were to breathe consciously and know that they're breathing in life, really consciously, all this, then they could go months with no food and they would be in good shape.
Yes.
They could go months with no food.
I
I
know.
mean, that's not going to be the masses by any means, but it's possible for a human being to do that, to transcend.
It's part of our evolution as
Yes,
the divine humans.
yes,
When we look at nature, animals know how to do that during droughts, during migrations. They can go, birds can do that, butterflies do that for long periods of time. Whales do that.
exactly. Yeah, for 6 months at a time.
Mm.
Yeah, but they live in the moment, you see, and in the moment is all the power. The power of love exists in the moment. The power of creation exists in the moment. We haven't been there in this cycle.
Yeah, there's too much baggage.
Too much baggage, but we created all of the baggage.
Yeah.
Somebody said to me once, what's the difference between you and Jesus? Or the Christ? I said, well, Christ spent far more time in the moment than I do. But I'm still learning. I'm still doing my best to keep there as much as possible. But he said, and the Buddha, they just spent more time in the moment than me.
Right.
And the great teachers, the great Indian saints, there's so many of them. I read about many of them. I mean, I was reading one who was 184. He had 2 rejuvenations. And I'm reading.
Yeah, I have this book right here.
I have it. That's my book.
Yeah.
I've got that. Yeah. He's the one. But my book doesn't have the same heading, but
Right.
it's the same person.
Right.
He walked through a jungle like in the 19th century. He's walking through a bit of the jungle, and they said, you can't go that way. It's full of tigers. And they'll eat you. And he said, well, if they need this body more than I do, they can have it. And so he goes walking in, because it's walk through there half a day or walk 3 days round. And he chose to walk through. And 2 tigers came to him, one on each side, and he put his hands on them, and they just led him through the jungle and out the other side.
Yeah.
I said, that's the relationship with nature that is possible.
That's the natural human.
Yeah. And not only that lifts the consciousness of those 2 tigers. Because on this planet, nature is what I call the natural evolution of consciousness, but humans are the creative evolution of consciousness. Well, our creation has just dropped down to more of the same over and over. Yeah. We're not in the creative evolution.
Well, we're in a program. We're repeating the story over and over again, rather than opening to what's present.
Every lifetime, we recreate the wheel.
Yeah.
So we cycle out again.
Right. Some time ago, you were talking about your experience with the river, the springboard. And I remember when you spoke about this in Talking with Nature, that's also where you first experienced your connection with Pan. Would you like to share that story with people?
Actually, the Pan part came in the journey into nature. But it's interesting, when I wrote Talking with Nature, I wrote from the consciousness I was, frightened, a bit fearful, hadn't a clue what was going on, but just faithfully recorded it. Two publishers said, if you write this from the authority, we will publish it, but you're not the authority in it. I said, well, they would be a lie. I was not the authority. I was a student and I hadn't a clue what was going on. And so I wouldn't do that. But eventually I got Kramer, he published it. Okay, so when you mean the story where I met Pan on the way down to the river?
When he was on the
Okay.
springboard and doing all his somersaults.
Pan was a rather demanding teacher. This was in the times when I saw a being that was Pan. I've learned since that there is no beingness at all. It was simply a metaphysical creation for me. So I came out the house, and the river was down a steep bank, and probably about 20 meters down to the river, down a bank. And I'm going down and I could see through the trees, and there's my bridge board. And as I look at it, I see Pan bouncing up and down on the bridge board, doing somersaults and coming down and bouncing up again. And this is impossible. It's not possible because the bridge board was like 12 inches wide and about 4 inches thick and about 12 feet long. And that is as flexible as a brick. It couldn't flex. And yet it was whipping like this. And so I'm looking at it, and it's interesting because I had a huge lesson to learn. And I didn't know what to do. I thought I must be dreaming. This isn't possible. So I smacked myself round the face way too hard, completely knocked myself over. I'm sort of laying on the ground thinking, God, that hurt. And when I got up, there's Pan doing the same thing. And my emotions went wild. And I continued on down. And when I got to the bottom, and this is true, I just curled up in a fetal position and cried and cried and cried and cried. I just cried my eyes out because this couldn't happen. It was impossible. And so Pan finally, up in the air, does a double somersault and then comes and lands on the water without a ripple. And he looks at me and he said, you have to go, not these exact words, I do have them written down, but he said, basically, humanity lives within the parameters of your mental beliefs and your mental and emotional borders and boundaries. And we have to take you beyond your emotional boundaries. You have to go beyond them. And I didn't know there were such things. I didn't know there were mental and emotional borders and boundaries to my daily life. And that was the beginning of it. And I just cried and cried and cried because my emotions, they didn't know what to do. This wasn't possible. To this day, I don't understand it. All I now do is I accept it. I don't have the same borders and boundaries. I have found another boundary to my emotions, but that's a much bigger story. But that doesn't come up in my everyday life. And so gradually, Pan disabled my emotional and mental borders and boundaries until I was comfortable in allowing a greater reality to take over my personal reality.
And
you can do that apparently with some of the drugs, some of the hallucinogenic drugs, but I've never taken any, so I don't know.
Well, with some of the medicinal plants, you know, what I recognize is that what they actually do is they activate DMT within the pineal gland. So if our pineal gland is already functioning as it's supposed to be, we don't need drugs. We are in constant communication with every single plant, every single medicine, every single creature.
The first time was the most traumatic, I can assure you. One time I'm swimming in the river, and suddenly Pan is sitting on the water next to me. And he said, come with me. I said, okay, let me swim to the bank so my body's safe. He said, no, don't worry, come with me. I said, but then my body will drown. I'll be with you, but I don't want to come back to a body that's drowned. Just let me swing to the bank. He said, okay, you go to the bank. And so I haven't moved. He said, just give me your hand. I'll take you there. I gave him my hand. We're gone. And when I came back, the body was still way out in the deep river, but it was okay. It was okay. It was doing okay. It didn't drown.
Yeah.
And so I learned to trust, and I began to learn things that had, up till then, had just been words. That was a little bit traumatic.
Yeah.
And I had other traumatic experiences, but Pan said, we're going to take you into various birds and animals. Well, I thought cheetah, yes. Eagle, yes. This is going to be good. Elephant, yes. In fact, every animal and bird that I shot or maligned were the animals and birds I experienced. By God, that was traumatizing, I'm telling you. Very traumatizing.
What was your experience? So supposing you went into the body of a snake, you shared that. And especially for someone who has projections of fear, what would they be likely to experience?
In a way, you can't translate the experience of the snake into human language. It's so one with its element. The only thing that stands out is when a snake comes near a human, it shears away straight away because it smells, tastes, connects with fear, which seems to be, I've encountered this from many animals. It's like humans have an energy field full of fear. It's almost natural to us now. To give you an example of the opposite, when I was about 30, I was in a valley with a number of us. We were living in a community, and we went on a hike, and we walked through the valley, and we came to a big farm. And on this farm, the rumor was that this man had 3 wives and a lot of children. And so we wanted to sneak through the edges, but the dogs found us. And so we were taken back, kids all round us, and we had to go and meet 3 sisters, did live with one farmer, and they all bore him children. But they were sort of, now I was stood in the room and we were just chatting amiably. They were perfectly nice. They weren't monsters. And there was a boy about 17 in the room, and he wanted to get out, and I couldn't help but notice him. And so like a crab, he slid sideways along the wall, flattened himself out away from me and everybody, and very slowly slid to the door and got out through the door. And for some reason, I wanted to see what was going on. And so as he went, I followed him out, but I didn't make myself obvious. And as he walked outside, a bird flew down and landed on his shoulder. Some lambs came up and stood around him. Little goats came. It's like he was a magnet for animals. And as I watched him, I realized, I had this profound realization. He was mentally handicapped. He was mentally handicapped, but he was harmless. And his energy was so harmless. And it came to me, I will never have that. I've shot animals, I've eaten animals. I will never be harmless in the way he is, because that was, at 17, he was completely, his consciousness was totally harmless. And every wild bird and animal knew it. And I realized I will never have that. I can be acceptable, but I will never have that energy of instant harmlessness that he had. And then it made me wonder, so who is handicapped, him or me?
Yeah. And isn't that what children experience before they get programmed by our adult educational system? And the ability to see into nature, to see fairies and elves and elementals and interact with them and communicate with them, listen to them.
I can move into their kingdom, but I can't see them in this human kingdom. I can't see them that way. but I can move into their realm quite easily, but I can't get them into mine. Occasionally, I have sat in my, I have seen them occasionally, but I've been in a deep state of meditation. And I've had some, yeah, but that world is a very real world for me. If you walk into my study, I've got beautiful sculptured fairies all over the place, about 15 or more. My grandchildren, when they were tiny, would try to count them, and I would move them around. And so I'd say, how many are there today? And sometimes I'd take one out, and I could always tell if they were just not bothering. But I think they thought Grandad's weird. And they're still there. The grandchildren are grown up. Now they've got their own children. So now I'm a great grandfather. But the fairies are still there, and just like real fairies, they're ageless. And at 84, I don't have an ache or pain in my body. I've never felt healthier. So I'm giving agelessness a little touch. See how we get on together.
Yeah.
The more you live in the moment, the less you age.
So tell us more about the elemental beings, the fairies, elves. You talk about them as ageless. Who are they, and how, what's their?
You can't go, who are they? Or even what are they? They are elemental energies. We are designed to be able to co-create with them, with the Deva, with the various elemental energies. We're designed to co-create. Like, for instance, the element of fire. A person in Los Angeles, they moved into a house, into a row of mansions on the edge of the fire zone in Los Angeles. And they had a house built, and they had a Buddhist monk come in and bless it. And about 2 years later, a fire came sweeping through, and it took every house out in the row except theirs. Now, that's not by accident. People would say, oh, wow, weren't they lucky? No, the house was blessed. And these elementals, I want to be careful with my words. They don't exactly cooperate with us because we're so unaware. But like, I have a every season, fire season, I bless our property. And I always connect with the fire elemental. And I always say to them, I honor you, I acknowledge you, and I bless you. And I'd like you to, if you come racing through, please leave our property undamaged. You are honored and blessed. And I feel that very deeply.
Yeah.
And so when you work with them, to me, I trust that completely. I absolutely trust that. And when you work with them, you have to have trust. If you're going to do it and have insurance, then it's not going to work. So I have minimum insurance and maximum trust. Yeah. You realize if we lived in a world of trust, there would be no insurance companies.
Right.
Because trust is a creative energy that if you trust 100%, then you are creating a world in which you live that is filled with trust. And that doesn't mean consensus reality is in there. That would take a lot of explaining. So to continue into the elementals. And so working with the elementals on the basic level like that is very, very rewarding. For instance, in our garden, in about 2001 or 2, it became obvious that we were going into a drought. And now all my garden plants are basically, this is subtropical. And so, as you know, they're mostly evergreen and subtropics. And I let them know that it became obvious that they were getting bothered by the drought. It was getting very dry. And so I walked in and I consciously imagined an English garden in the winter. And I showed the plants, all these plants dropped their leaves and they survived the cold. Now you're going into hot and dry. if you drop your leaves, you will survive. It's up to you. If you want to depart, it's okay. I love you, and love is a freedom. And I said, if you need energy, just draw it from me, because I'm always walking around my garden. If you need energy, I'll give it to you. But we're going into a long drought. Drop your leaves. Every plant in the garden, except the ixoras, every other species dropped their leaves. It looked terrible. I mean, I've never seen a leafless garden in the subtropics. It felt terrible. But anyway, I maintained a good state. And for the next 2 years, we had showers, but it didn't reach the roots. It could keep the grass green, but it didn't reach the roots of shrubs. And then the rains came. And one of the things this taught me, in a drought, do not focus on the drought, focus on the next big wet event, the next big rain. That's what it taught me. Don't, and this is what I'm doing now, don't focus on the so-called disaster, focus on the metamorphosis, the alchemy, the love. Anyway, and so the rains came, and suddenly the garden, it didn't go into leaf, it came into flower. And there was this incredible outpouring of energy. People commented on it who walked round. Oh my God, I've never felt energy like that in a garden. And I realized then that if they had drawn energy from me, I hadn't felt it. But boy, did I feel them giving it back. And so that's another way of working. It's not just the plants, it's all the elementals, the fairies, the elves, and everything that's connected with the growth of a plant. So if you get a single leaf, you have nature spirits. If you put a dot on a piece of paper, they're as small as that. And there's millions of them to a leaf. And they wink in and out of a three-dimensional reality and their reality. So they're winking in and out continuously. Interestingly, so is our body. Our bodies are winking in and out of existence. You would know this because you're a well-educated man. We're winking in and out of existence, but our eyes only see the continuity. But with them, they're winking in and out just the same, but I can see them winking in and out. And so they're stitching energy into the leaves. And so when I asked for this, they stopped stitching energy into the leaves. They allowed the leaves to drop off. So their whole role changed. And they stood back and allowed this to happen. So that is working with nature spirits, with working with the elementals. And I remember a man, I read about him, in the desert, lived on the edge of the desert. He would sow his corn, he'd put the seeds in and water it. That was it. There was no more rain, it didn't rain, and he'd grow and harvest a lovely crop of corn every year. And people couldn't understand it. And he would say, each seed holds my heart. I water it. And I mean, you know, a simple statement, but a beautiful one.
Beautiful. Well, that's what the green thumb is about, isn't it? You're connected through your heart to nature, and the nature work through you.
Soul, heart, consciousness. It's one big pulse connection.
So, Michael, what you're describing about these elementals, I think is especially relevant to us in this time of transition, as we go through the earth changes and all these solar, galactic, planetary cycles, which are natural cycles. You know, it's our relationship with the elemental forces that allow us to move through these in a way that's thriving and protected and graceful.
It's I've noticed that as the frequency has been lifting, nature has lifted with it. Humanity, some humans have lifted, that's the awakening. Most humans are following the old program, but nature has lifted. And I have found that I'm experiencing now, because when I write a book of my metaphysical travels, it's an experiencing book. Like when I wrote, for instance, From Illusion to Enlightenment, I sat down and wrote what I know. But when I'm traveling, I don't know, I'm experiencing. And I'm writing a book now called Pan, ... and me. And so I'm experiencing, and I've just spent some time in Gondwana land. And the energy is so totally different. It's completely different from ours. And I'd spending time in a forest. And it's a forest that is where every tree is completely connected. And you can feel the connection. Like in a way here, you can't. But the humans of that time, there weren't many, and they were much more earth, nature-oriented, sensitive than we are today.
Was this the Lemurian epoch or something else?
This is before Lemuria.
Okay.
This is going back before Lemuria. And I said to them, could I be here physically? What would happen if I arrived here physically? And they said, if you came here now physically, with your physical energy of where you live today and the time you live in, it would be like a bomb exploding in the middle of the forest.
Wow.
It'd be like an atom bomb going off. I said, geez, I'm not that bad, surely. And they said, it's all about energy.
Yeah.
You know, metaphysically, you can be here, but physically you couldn't, because your energy is so attuned to the heaviness, the density, the aggression, the violence of your time. And I see that in me sometimes. I'm not proud of it. I'm not ashamed of it. I see it in me sometimes. And I'm all the time aware of softening that. But I see that in me. And there, I realized I could accept that. I said, yes. But what I want to do now, like you and I both know that everything is energy. And if you take the physical away from the energy, I think you could put the whole world in something like the size of a football, and all humanity would occupy like a thimble. Because if you take the space, if you take all the physical and just leave the space, and that space is consciousness. And so we learn that the frequency of the body is lower than the speed of light, and the frequency of the metaphysical or spiritual beings we are is far higher than the speed of light. And when we look around, as you and I know, we see 1% of what is. And I said to Pam, would you show me some of that other 99%? So we haven't got to that yet. I keep having sidetracks of things that fascinate me. For instance, I'm fascinated because I noticed that Snopes, there's a website, Snopes, they debunk everything. If it's not scientific, they debunk it. Wonderful. And but there are mountains, small mountains, that they're beginning to realize are in fact the trunk of a petrified tree. It's not really soil and dirt at all. And they're beginning to find that up to 7 miles away, there are the roots, petrified roots. Now, Snopes says, no, this is not true. This is just stories. I want to metaphysically go to that era, that time, long before this. Were there such trees? Because I'm fascinated. A tree trunk 2 miles across. I would like to see the earth that supported that. I'd like to see that time. So that's another little sidetrack I want to take. But when you're in this forest that I've been in Gondwana land, it's pretty incredible. And so, I mean, you know, the trees there, we have nothing like them on the planet today. They're so huge.
From a metaphysical perspective, there's no time. And Gondwana land exists in this space and time, parallel to our own. And we can experience it directly like you did. And we all can actually transform this earth into a pre-Gondwana land reality.
Yes, it's not like going back to Gondwana land, although I am inclined to say that because people understand it. Gondwana land is right now here in a different reality frame. Right. It's no longer appropriate for us. just the same as dinosaurs. They didn't become extinct. They simply we moved on to a different page, but it's all in the same book of life.
Yeah.
And 200 million years of evolution, and we think dinosaurs have gone extinct. That's quite a long time, 200 million years. But hey, who needs the dinosaurs in our life when we've got the cabal? You know?
Exactly.
We've got enough to deal with.
Yeah. I'll tell you a quick story here. When I was in Turkey, I lived in Turkey for some time, and I traveled and visited Egypt quite often. And so one day
Very
I had
white.
this experience where Ra came to me, the consciousness of the sun, and he was talking about the ancient Egyptian culture, initiations, and the rituals that people had to go through to prepare for the big initiations, which were always about facing their fear. And so crocodiles were part of this. They had to go through these crocodile tanks, similar to what you were describing about snakes and sharks, people's projections. And what he said is that in those days, you had to learn how to navigate through these, not through a nest of crocodiles, but through your fear, because they feed on fear. And so all these initiations were about facing your fear before the final initiation in the Great Pyramid, where you learn to expand your physical body into your light body and are no longer third dimensional. And what he said is that we no longer need crocodiles. We have each other. So in a sense, it's exactly what you're saying. We no longer need the dinosaurs because we are able to now, or we're forced to, encounter those aspects of ourselves that have locked into fear, that have identified with fear. And as you're talking about Pan, Michael, I'm also realizing that your experience of Pan, your relationship with Pan, your perception of Pan has changed. So rather than just being an external being as he was in the beginning, it's become part of everything, as you've become part of everything.
Yeah.
And so when you talk about embracing these fears, you expand out further into that oneness, rather than resisting them, rather than denying them, projecting them.
Yeah, I mean, I had a few things that I used to be puzzled about, the Christians and the lions.
Yeah.
I mean, why didn't they? I always used to think, why didn't they just say, okay, God, I've got a choice of denying you or being eaten by a lion. Now, look, if I get eaten by a lion, what can I do for you? So I'm going to step in the ring and deny you, but I don't mean it. I really don't mean it. I'm going to work for you, but I just don't want to be eaten by a lion. And God says, sorry, son, but your journey is through the gut of the lion. And I used to think, God, there must have been a way around this. But later, one day I began to realize, wow, that was trust. That was faith.
Yeah.
They'd rather be killed and eaten by a lion, which was not an easy process, than betray or deny God. And I thought, that courage is gone. Where is that courage? I looked in myself. Do I have that courage? And when I was thinking about it then, no, I didn't have that courage. I acknowledged it. I did not have that sort of courage, that sort of trust, that sort of faith. I didn't have it. And it sort of shook me. And I thought, well, we look back and laugh at that, but that was serious, serious drama. And but it's an amazing thought. If, for instance, everybody released their fear, in other words, didn't create it anymore, there would be no cabals, there would be no police, there'd be no armies, there would be no villains, there'd be no pollution, the whole planet would be clean and pristine and rising to a higher level, moving into a dimensional shift right now, just like that.
Just like that. Yeah.
Fear is the suppressor.
Yeah. 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 Well, beautifully said. And this is possible. It's not a dream. It's not just an illusion. The illusion is that this is real. So it's like, we're shifting out of one illusion into another, which is not so much an illusion as an unrealized reality. And how do we do
It's,
this? How do we step from third dimension to fifth, sixth, higher dimensional perspectives?
I agree with you, it's potentially possible for every human being. But life follows probability patterns. And the probability is those who've chosen fear over and over and over and have married fear and are hand in hand with fear and have a job that they hate because they fear releasing that job and they do everything from the fear. Do you know what? The chances of them letting go of fear are very, very, they're back into the next cycle.
Right.
And it's not like that's a failure. It's all about timing.
Right.
It's no good a chicken get excited on the 5th day of laying its eggs because they're not about to hatch. It's going to have to lay them all and sit on them for about 25 days. Then the chicken can get excited.
Okay, so Michael, I have a difficult question for you. And this is the question that a lot of people have been asking themselves, and I don't really have an answer to this. I have an answer based on my own idea of hopium. And the question is, we're going through a time of transition. We're going through earth changes. We're going through this COVID drama. We're going through the jabs and the genetic information that is likely to create all kinds of dead ends in our genetic structure. Okay, in the face of all this, in the face of all the fear, duality, suffering, as we go through this intense acceleration of consciousness, of energy fields, how many people are likely to actually make it through this with their physical bodies intact?
My estimate, I thought about this. I think maybe 20%. I think that would be good. 20%. I once, not long ago, I thought to myself, how many people on this planet are enlightened?
Yeah.
Because the enlightened consciousness lifts so many. The enlightened consciousness lifts millions. And I don't mean that means superior. It's just a higher consciousness. And I thought, it came to me very strongly. I put the question out and I was sort of using direct knowing. It came to me about 1 in a million. And I thought, okay, it's about 8 billion people. So that's 800 million enlightened people. Of course, we don't know who they are. But I thought, yeah, that could well be. And I thought 800 million, that could easily lift 20% of humanity. That could lift 20% of humanity. And that felt somehow right. And I thought, well, that leaves a lot to be recycled. But then I thought, there is no death. It's all an imposter. If you're in a school in grade 4 and you play every day and play around and see how many stones you can collect in the playground, more than other people, and then come at the end and you get your exams, then you find that the other class was doing their homework and you have to stay in grade 4 while they go to grade 5. Except in this situation, it's about 80% were playing with stones and seeing how many they could collect, and only a few were doing their homework and moving on. And so they go into 5th grade, and that's all it is. It's just some got caught up in survival and materialism, because that's the big one. Fear, materialism, and survival. They're the big three.
And we have to see that this is not a tragedy, because, from the eyes of fear, materialism, and survival, this is a big tragedy. But from the eyes of continuity and evolution, it's what Gaia, or Mother Earth, has been doing.
You know what Lao Tzu said 2,500 years ago? The mark of our ignorance is the depth of our belief in violence, injustice, and tragedy. What the caterpillar calls the end of the world, the master calls a butterfly.
Yeah.
That has been misquoted on so many T-shirts. Yeah. It's disgusting. I mean, you really need the whole thing in context. But it's right now. What the caterpillar calls the end of the world, the master calls a butterfly. And that's exactly what is taking place. Yeah. And in a way, I feel that you and I and so that 20% of us have earned the right to not have to live with police force, with villains, with governments, with corruption, with violence, with anger and aggression. You know, I don't need any of that in my life. I don't need to do that again. We've earned the right to move on because we acknowledged way back, I'm a spiritual being. I'm going to focus on my spirituality as well as my material body. And we began to blend them, whereas others looked at material wealth, like television, the rubbish on television today. Now we've got another one of those, what was that Trump show that he was in, where this guy, I don't know, he's like a big boss and apprenticeship, they apprentice to him anyway. There's another one started, a self-made billionaire. The arrogance comes off that guy in a cloud of negative energy, his arrogance. And I thought, this is the way we keep people dumbed down and enslaved. People watch that stuff. Big Brother. People watch that crap.
Well, you know, one of the things that I struggle with sometimes is, yes, it's important to be aware. It's important to be aware of what's happening with the deep state and the mechanisms of, you know, all this duality and fear. But how do we become or remain aware of it, but not give a power to it? And that's the journey that we're, you know, describing. It's looking at the big picture. It's looking at it from eyes of trust rather than fear. It's looking at our relationship with Mother Earth and nature. So we don't see it as something that is taking us away from the fabric of life. Whereas most people, when they're in fear, they feel, you know, they have to hold on to what they have, whether it's a belief system, whether it's a physical body, whether it's a personality structure.
That's the language of survival. But you described it beautifully. I mean, you just described it perfectly. It's like walking in the dream awake. You look around, you realize it's a dream. You don't have to get emotional over it because it's a dream. You know, and it's just a dream. You walk in the dream awake and you realize it's fine. You know, nothing I can do about the dream. I can't change it. The only thing is, if you're when we sleep at night, we have 5 cycles of about an hour and a half each. And so we dip down, come up, dip down, come up. And each time we come to the surface, if we have a nice dream, we snuggle down and keep asleep. But if you come to the surface and you're having a nightmare, you wake up screaming. Well, right now, we're moving into the nightmare. And so people can wake up screaming. It's better than staying asleep in the illusion. Not enough will wake up, but it is enough. It's okay. It's okay.
I think that's
every one of us.
Right.
We've been sowing the seeds. We've been sowing the seeds of this moment for millennia.
You know what I'm reminded of, Michael, is when an egg is impregnated in a woman. There's millions of sperms out there rushing towards the egg. Only 1 or 2 of them actually make it. But if it wasn't for those millions, none would make it, because those millions are necessary to provide the atmosphere for impregnation.
You created a whole new picture for me. You created a whole new metaphor. Yeah, that's very good. That's very good. We're in exactly the same position. Exactly the same now. It's a moment of fertility.
And it's the moment of the rebirth, the new birth, Gaia Luminous, as I call it. Yeah,
it's exciting.
It's exciting.
I remember we had an English man who was very good at interviewing people, Michael Parkinson. He's now Sir Michael Parkinson. And he was doing an interview, I think it was with Bertrand Russell, who was a famous English philosopher at the time. And he said, so tell me, sir, he said, you're now in your 80s, well in your 80s. He said, what is ahead of you? You've had an amazing life. What's ahead of you? And Bertrand Russell looked at me and he said, well, he said, I'm in the boat on the ocean, and he said, I can see a distant shore. I'm getting closer and closer. He said, I can see the land. He said, I can see the land and the sand, and it's full of mystery. He said, I just want the boat to get there as quick as possible so I can jump out of this boat and walk into this new land. And Michael Parkinson suddenly looked astonished. He's a Catholic, and he suddenly looked astonished, and he said, you're. And Bertrand Russell said, well, you might be talking about death. I'm talking about eternal life. He said, you know, I'm finished. This boat, I don't have far to go. I can't wait to get to the land again, to start a whole new journey, a whole new mystery. Michael Parkinson changed the subject because as a Catholic, it was too uncomfortable for him.
Yeah. Well, I see it as an identification. You know, people even talk about the journey across the bridge into eternity, or people talk about ascension, where you're shifting from one frequency to another. You know, all those metaphors, they're great metaphors, but it's still in linear time with a linear concept of reality. And if my identification is with the soul or with the spirit, then it's not so much about ascending, it's not about going across, but it's about landing, it's about entering, it's about becoming what I already am. And so I talk about descension more than I talk about ascension, because from the perspective of the soul, I'm entering into this body. I am becoming conscious of presence in this reality while remaining conscious of other realities.
Nicely said, very nicely said. Yeah, I see what you're saying very much. It's like connecting with truth rather than having truth out there. It's finally bringing it in to a living moment, a living reality, but connecting with what is. Because what do we move on to? I'm very happy with this planet. Another 50 years will do me nicely.
Right.
Although there you are, linear.
Our bodies are designed to live forever if our consciousness is fully present.
Yeah.
It's the separation of the personal self and the universal self or the soul self, whatever. That's what creates the conditions for entropy. And that's when we start to age and die, get sick.
Yeah, the problem there is that consciousness draws to itself the body. You know, consciousness draws to itself form through which to express. And so the lower consciousness draws a form that doesn't have that immortal form, but a higher consciousness can draw to itself the physical, or even if it starts as a lower consciousness and through its lifetime begins to transcend into a higher consciousness, it then changes the body in a way. Because, you know, I look sometimes in the mirror and think to myself, well, everybody keeps telling me, so many people say, you look like you're in your 60s, not in your 80s. And I think, well, how is this? Because when my uncles were in their 80s, they looked like old men. Okay, I know I was looking through young eyes, but my great uncles. But I think it's a changing consciousness. The body changes with it. In fact, I know it does. The body changes with it.
Yeah.
Because I'm more, in some ways, I'm more flexible than I used to be, because I'm more flexible here.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I feel the same. And it's your relationship with the elemental kingdoms, because that's what creates the body. It's not just physical cells. It's the elemental aspects behind the physical, the etheric body that's awakening to the energies of fire and wind and earth and water and ether, especially. And like you were saying, you know, it's possible at this time, and I know people who have gone for months, for years, without needing to nurture their physical bodies with physical food. Some people I know who have never, who haven't had anything to drink for many years, and they're just like a plant, receiving everything they need from the sun, from oxygen.
Beautiful. I tried that once, quite a few years ago, maybe 20 years ago. I tried going breatharian. I did it all wrong. My consciousness wasn't ready. And
Right.
at the end of 5 weeks, I looked like a walking ghost. And so I gave up. But in that process, I learned that it was possible.
Yeah.
That the point of time comes when it was definitely, I learned, absolutely knew that it was possible. I gave up because I lost my joy. Not because I was dying, I lost my joy. And I realized that meant the timing was wrong, and my joy was very precious to me.
Timing is the key, isn't it? Yeah. So, like, what I'm aware of also is that evolution usually is tied in with necessity. So when there's a necessity, so supposing there's
Yeah,
shortages, there's climate changes, there's food shortages, there's extreme
yeah,
cold weather, then our bodies adapt. If we're
yeah,
flexible enough in our consciousness, our bodies
yeah,
adapt. We
yeah,
don't need to eat. We can heat our bodies directly. We don't need to, suffer. So all these
yeah,
things are possible, but it's only in the right timing when nature
yeah.
pushes us towards something new that we find that something changes.
Exciting times.
Yeah, exciting times. Where else and when else would we want to be here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to go soon.
Well, this has
I
been
could
wonderful.
I just mention the awakening, the Great Awakening,
Please do.
which I will be doing. It starts on the 18th of May. And I will be doing it. You can find all the details, michaelrhodes.online. You can find all details there. But I will be talking about the times we're in, as I've been talking with Kiara, and I will be discussing how we can move our consciousness into a better place, how we can grow ourselves, and how we can develop a relationship with ourselves. And our relationship with self is the most important relationship we ever have, because a relationship with self is a relationship with life. It's a relationship with nature, the relationship with God, the relationship with poverty or abundance. And so this is what I'll be talking about and teaching and supporting it with inner exercises. People call these meditations, but I don't. A meditation to me is basically silence, moving into a deepening silence. These are exercises which I will guide you in your metaphysical body to grow, exercises to grow on the inner and not so much the outer. And so it's going to take 9 weeks. It's not all crammed in. And I would welcome anybody who would like to join me on this to come on in. Everything's on the michaelrhodes.online. It's all there, everything you need to know.
So this is
And
starting May 18th. And is it a week?
maybe,
Is
yeah,
it a
2
week?
weeks
2 weeks.
or
Okay.
something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Every months go quicker and quicker. I mean, we only just had Christmas last week, and now it'll be June next month. I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah.
God, I don't know whether it's because I'm getting older, but it's all running. The time is going. So you know what it is. The brain perceives it as the time going faster, but in fact, it's the frequency and intensity of the moment is building up higher and higher, and the brain translates it as time going faster. But it isn't, it's the frequency getting higher,
Absolutely.
like you didn't know.
No, that's beautifully expressed. It's, because that's the question so many people have. The sense
Yeah.
that time is speeding up or slowing down. The sense that the body is dissolving. The sense that the emotions are going through tremendous upheaval. But it's all part of this transformation, this metamorphosis, and time is
You
part
can
of it.
prove I'm right. You have a brand new wristwatch and you sit in front of a 300-year-old grandfather clock, and you'll find time's going exactly the same speed on your watch and that clock.
Yeah.
It's all about the frequency.
Yeah.
You have to laugh at life Otherwise, you'd one would cry. So I laugh at it. I mean, seriously, it's like God had this incredible cosmic joke, and everybody went to sleep before the punchline. You know, God's idea of a joke was like we spend 3 months before we hit the punchline. Well, in 3 months, humanity had gone to sleep.
Yeah.
So God says, okay, I forgot the timeline. When you wake up, you'll get it. And when you wake up, you have to laugh.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, Michael, that's a good place to end for now. You know, I'd love to continue these conversations.
Oh, we can do it another.
Yeah, so let's make it happen. And I really appreciate, you know, just that we can hold this presence together in this way, and that you've done this for so many people, and what your contribution has been to the awakening of this earth.
And I thoroughly enjoyed this. I thank you very much for inviting me into this. And you are a thoroughly beautiful, wonderful human being.
Oh, thank you.
And if I say so, you've got to be. You are.
Yes, I know that. I know that. There's less and less resistance to that knowing. Yeah.
Yeah.
As we all are. Yeah.
Absolutely. But most people are self-critical. It's time to let self-criticism go and work with self-appreciation.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And, you know, listening to you gives me permission, gives others permission to do the same, because I see that in you, your ability to honor yourself in all the ways that you are, everything that you've been through. There's no judgment, there's no condemnation, there's no resistance. That's beautiful to see.
When I was a boy, my father called me Jack Blunt. And sometimes, even today, I can be a bit too blunt. But in the end, it's an honesty. And if I see I've been too blunt, I can look at the person and say, I was wrong. I'm sorry. I was wrong. And as long as those two go together with that flexibility, I think it's nice for us to be who we are. Not who we feel people should see us as.
Right.
In other words, we're not actors on the stage, we're reality on the stage. We are who we are. And that takes a lot of honesty and courage.
Yeah.
Courage to be who we are. I see that courage in you. And I acknowledge it and I appreciate it.
Thank you.
So I thank you very much for this, boys. We've been here a while.
For a while. So David will send you a MP4 file, which you'd be welcome to put up on your own platforms.
Thank you very much. We might chop it in half.
Yeah, maybe 2 parts or something. Yeah. Great.
Okay, Kiara. Thank you very much.
And my brother, my mentor, thank you. Until the next time.
Till the next time.
Okay, David, I'm going to press the record button or stop record button.